What if the future of 911 didn't depend on weather-worn radio towers, sketchy microwave links, and generators that may or may not start on the third try? What if your connection to the public safety lifeline was zipping over your head at 17,000 miles per hour? Sounds like a sci-fi movie, or maybe the next step in emergency communications. That's coming up next on TiPS, Today in Public Safety.
Welcome to TiPS, Today in Public Safety, your go-to podcast for today's breaking stories and public safety news. Here's your host, Fletch, with today's tips.
Welcome to TiPS, Today in Public Safety. This is Fletch. I'm a certified NENA ENP, and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday each week, I bring you the latest news and information about public safety and next-generation 911 services and solutions. Today, we'll be talking about whether the future of 911 might just be in space. Now, not dispatchers in spacesuits, although that would make for some pretty cool selfies. No, I'm talking about the real possibility of putting our communications infrastructure thousands of miles in orbit. You know, every so often I like to throw out ideas so far outside of the box, you can't even see the box anymore. And yes, that's usually when someone tries to hand me one of those special jackets with a lot of extra straps on it. But here's the thing, big crazy ideas sometimes turn into very practical solutions once you strip away the sci-fi. So let's start out with a quick orbit primer for everybody out there. Back in the early days of satellite communications, you needed massive dishes pointed at precise geosynchronous satellite orbits that were parked 22,236 miles above the Earth. Now, while these birds were great for staying in one spot in the sky, the required hardware was big, the power requirements were massive, and the portability wasn't really an option. Next, you've got the medium Earth orbit satellites that are about 12,500 miles up in space. This is where our GPS system lives. Now, they're not geostationary, they actually move across the sky, rising and setting about twice a day. That's handy for navigation, but the signal is so weak it can't cut through a building. I'm sure you've seen it. Your GPS is working great until you drive into a parking garage. Then, you're basically navigating blind. Finally, we've got the new cool kids, low Earth orbit or LEO satellites. Interesting name given our use case. Now, these satellites orbit at just 100 to 500 miles up and zip around the planet in about 90 minutes. They don't work by themselves, they're actually in constellations or fleets of satellites that hand off signals to each other and to the ground. The poster child for this technology is Starlink, and it's already been deployed in many areas after hurricanes, where it quickly restored communications to ECCs in places where terrestrial networks were absolutely wiped out. So here's the big question. If LEO constellations are able to provide broadband to a cabin sitting in the middle of the woods, why not use them for public safety comms full-time? Think about it. Radio towers are great until a storm, a wildfire, or a curious backhoe takes them out. They require power, fuel for their generators, and connectivity. You know, all the things that you can lose in a disaster. Even the microwave links are you up types of relationships. Both ends need to be there and working at the same time. Now, imagine your ECC connected to the cloud, but the cloud's main office is in orbit. You could have mobile command centers rolling down the highway, fully connected the whole time. You could scatter smaller ECC units in different locations to gain redundancy and resiliency. And best of all, you're able to share national level resources. You know, things like AI, mapping databases, as well as multimedia storage, all instantly across the entire country. We've already witnessed a small hint of this. If you were at APCO in Baltimore this year, you saw multiple ECCs staffed remote positions and do it right from a remote section of the show floor. Probably one of the hardest parts? Engineering all those connections. If those links lived in orbit, half the headaches would have vanished. Now, of course, there's going to be challenges. Things like latency, cost, and making sure your link doesn't go poof if you park under a metal awning. but the potential is huge. So we're probably not going to see 911, the Mars edition, anytime soon. Although we probably all have some colleagues we'd like to staff there. Full time. But just the idea of satellite-based public safety communications is no longer fantasy. We're just one firmware update and a few smart partnerships away from that being a reality. That wraps up this episode of TiPS Today in Public Safety. I hope the podcast was educational for you and you learned something new today. If you like what you heard today, please drop a like and be sure to tell your friends. And don't forget to leave a comment and let me know what you liked or disliked. I dare you. No, I double dog dare you. If you've got any questions or want to suggest a topic of your very own, you can always reach out to me at Fletch911 on social media. Who knows, maybe one of your ideas will be the topic of a future podcast. This is Fletch. Thanks so much for listening. And if you're in public safety, thanks for what you do every single day. Stay safe, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.
You've been listening to TiPS Today in Public Safety, your go-to podcast for today's breaking stories and public safety news. Hosted by Fletch and available every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on 911tips.com. That's 911tips.com. Be sure to like and subscribe, and remember to join us each week for the latest on NG 911. I am Spider Harrison, the official 911 voiceover dude. Catch me on Sirius XM on various channels, including 90s on 9, the 10 spot, and on the Weekend Countdown on Hits 1. Or don't regret it for the rest of your life. Either way, I'm good.